Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Block Runner Podcast. I'm your host, William, always here with your co-host, Iron.
What's going on, dude?
On the sticks, we got TJ.
Hello.
All right, dude. So we're hot off the presses, and I don't know if we can even talk about it. Well, I guess we can. It's Saturday.
Talk about what?
The presses, dude.
I mean, of course we could talk about it, dude. Unless you're hiding something from me.
Unless it doesn't actually occur.
Now you lost me again. I don't even know what you're
The presses,
referring
dude.
to.
Think about the presses. The printing presses. Something's about to print soon.
There's a lot of pressing things happening all at once, dude. So
No.
I don't know which one you're referring to.
The announcement press.
Which one? I mean, there's a lot, dude.
Oh,
There's a lot.
boy.
We got NAT.FUN. Is that the one you're talking
No,
about?
NAT. And SpiderPool publications.
Oh, but we just talked about that.
Did we?
Oh my God, you lost me again, dude. Yes.
It's supposed to happen, and it hasn't happened, but we're talking about it as if it happened because this video is being published
Yeah, but
2 days later.
it hasn't happened, but it's been announced that it's happening, right? Already.
Yeah,
Publicly.
but this is another aspect of that.
True. Okay, now you got. I've landed.
Holy moly.
That was quite a circle.
can't-
We're off to a great start.
Yeah,
here.
we can't even like signal here.
No, absolutely not, dude. I operate on
Pure literalness.
real time, activities. I don't have quantum
Quantum tunneling to
Yeah.
the future of 2 days from now.
the future and the past and everywhere else all at the same time, dude. That's not how I operate, unfortunately. I'm not quantum grade.
Yeah, you need to watch Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Is that what that movie's about?
Pretty much. Have you seen that, TJ?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So it's literally about something related to quantum.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, but
Okay.
you take much different takeaways from movies than I do.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you didn't really like it,
oh, you did,
right?
I thought it was okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was fine, but it's pretty good. I like the creativity of it.
I mean, I feel like every movie is gonna elicit that kind of response. Like,
No,
when's the last time a recent movie you've been blown away by?
well, I would qualify that as one of the more recent ones.
What? Really?
Yeah, it's like 3-4 years old at most.
Okay. Well, add that to the list of things I'll probably never see that Will told me to watch. But yeah, I'm here for it, dude. But yeah, I'm not Everything Everywhere All at Once or whatever the hell that title was. That's not me. So we're here now.
Yeah, this
You
is
guys
the
are watching
future,
this on Saturday.
and we're talking about the past
Right.
and something occurring in the past that has not occurred yet.
But it will have once you're watching this.
Hopefully.
Well, let's assume it does because we need to explain what it even
Yeah,
means.
so what are
right?
we even talking about? We're talking about SpiderPool announcing that they're going to be distributing the NAT token along with Bitcoin to their
Yes.
pool participants, and it's happening. They fully announced it, and it should be happening relatively soon. It says dropping soon.
Yeah, so this is a big deal. This is what everybody's been kind of waiting for. We saw the announcement from them in collaboration with TAP probably 2 or 3 months ago.
It was in September, October.
Jeez.
Yes, like 6 or 7 months ago.
Oh my God, dude.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like that long, but I guess it was.
Yes.
So about 6 months ago, I guess, was the announcement of, this collaboration was ensuing. That meant that at some point we would see, a dashboard coming out from SpiderPool that shows Bitcoin and NAT. So this is the thing that hasn't happened yet, but
Yeah.
possibly will be happening by the time this is out there.
Yes.
If not, it will be soon after. And then we'll probably get some snapshots from somebody
Yeah.
that actually shows this dashboard
Correct.
operating in real time, not like in beta. It's actually happening
Yeah.
where pool participants are receiving NAT and Bitcoin for the first time in history.
Yeah, there's been leaks of the dashboard too for
Oh.
weeks.
I haven't seen those yet.
Yeah, you have, dude.
I don't think so. I've
The
seen
dashboard?
speculation. I haven't actually seen the
You have
image.
not seen the dashboard?
No.
I've shown you, dude.
Well, you should bring it up here, dude. I'm sure.
Well, I
everyone
can't find
watching-
it now. It's hidden in the archive somewhere.
God dang it, dude. Yeah, I've heard whispers and I've seen chatter about some dashboard leak, but I haven't actually seen the image myself. What's it look like? Describe it, dude.
Hold on. Let me see if I can find it, dude.
No, you don't have to. You could just describe taste. You know?
It's think of it, imagine a dashboard,
I'm imagining.
and in that dashboard is only about how much Bitcoin is being allocated,
Okay.
right, to you.
Right.
Now it says Bitcoin and NAT.
Okay. Does it have like a NAT logo somewhere on there?
Yeah,
Hell yeah.
yeah. Let me see.
That's what I want to see. I want to see the Bitcoin logo and the NAT logo, you know, somewhere in the same field of data within the dashboard with SpiderPool also in the shot, right?
Yeah, I could have. Maybe it hasn't been.
I knew it.
Maybe, maybe not, dude.
You're crossing worlds here, actually.
Hold on. It's got to be.
Yeah. I don't think you're going to find it, dude.
It's
But I'll take your word for it. And who cares? It's just a leak, right? Because leaks are not relevant. We want to see the real deal stuff anyways.
yeah,
Because a leak could be forged, especially nowadays.
yeah. I'm telling you, you've seen it. You've seen it, dude.
All right, dude. I guess you're not just everywhere all at once. You're also like in my head, dude. Just, you know, what I've seen and what I haven't, dude. But I can't recall, you know. I just can't.
All right. Well, anyways, those leaks. Is this it? Don't show this, TJ. But is this it?
Oh, God. Zoom in, enhance for me. I'm not seeing any logos, dude. What a.
There's no logo here, but
Oh, it's just you see the word of NAT and the words of Bitcoin. You don't actually see the logo of either. On the left, you do. You see BTC.
yeah,
So they need to add, you know, NAT right there next to it. That's what I want to see. But you do see the two balances side by side, which is pretty cool. And the SpiderPool logo,
so this doesn't.
all in the
This
same
doesn't
shot.
ring a bell.
Maybe.
I told you.
Maybe it does, dude. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things ringing this bell lately, dude. So
Wow.
I know this is a pretty big
TMI,
one.
dude. TMI.
Yeah, I guess it got scooted to the side for a second, but it's properly back. And yeah, hopefully you guys, once you see this, you'll, you know, get the point.
yeah, yeah.
I'm sure you will.
So let me go back to what's happening here. So yeah, SpiderPool finally doing the distribution. So why? So why are they doing distributions? Like, why do this? Well, because more money is more than less money. That's why.
Right, right.
And so that's kind of good, right? So when you generate more money, it tends to be a good thing.
Yeah, but still, even still, because this required some kind of like technical lift,
Yeah.
you know, there has to be more than just acknowledgement of that this is, if we do this, then we're receiving more money. It's like there's like reputation at stake,
Yeah.
all these other different considerations where it's like this thing has to have like real sustainability to it, or like there has to be some consensus or understanding. Like
That's true.
This is a viable, valid thing.
Yeah, I would assume that anyone who sees this at first glance and who understands who SpiderPool is, and let's give some context as to what SpiderPool is. Mm-hmm. So SpiderPool is a Bitcoin miner, and if you go to NAT.GMI just to see it plainly, there's these Bitcoin miners, and some miners mine Bitcoin at a rate higher than others, right? Because they're contributing more hash power, right? And so Foundry is number one. It's USA-based company, and they're just dominating. They basically have like 31% of the hash power or more. And then there's AntPool, via BTC, F2 Pool, and then SpiderPool. So these are the top 5 miners in Bitcoin. Yeah. So collectively, these top 5 miners are around 90% of the hash power of Bitcoin. And so these check marks represent that AntPool, via BTC, F2 Pool, and SpiderPool have already engaged with NAT, either at a technical level or they are starting to move NAT to sell it to pay bills.
Yeah.
And so SpiderPool says, okay, we're receiving NAT at our current hash rate, meaning at the same rate that we earn Bitcoin, we're earning NAT. And so, okay, so we are a business that collects a pool of contributors to hash power, and I am distributing Bitcoin to those pool contributors as a business. And so as a business does, they're like, hey, I want to create a better reason for people to contribute to my pool. And so since NAT is supposed to do this, it's supposed to give miners more revenue, because more revenue for miners means more security for the Bitcoin network. They're like, okay, we're going to distribute Bitcoin and NAT to the pool providers via a dashboard.
Right.
So that's what's happening. And so SpiderPool is the 5th largest Bitcoin miner right now, and they're the first to distribute the NAT token to their participants.
Correct. Yeah, therefore adding like a huge notch in the validity belt of all of this. Viability was achieved a long time ago once like miners started interacting at the protocol level with, NAT and TAP to begin with. But now with a miner of this caliber, again, going through that due diligence and that technical lift process, and now, staking their reputation around, adopting this thing and distributing it to their customer base, you can incorporate that into the fundamental value of what this token actually is. Right?
Yeah. Yes.
Then, yeah.
So I'll say just additional context. So when this started occurring, we updated the protocol to distribute the NAT token to the Bitcoin miners on block 885588. We're on currently the block 945374. So at 885588, that's when NAT started to be distributed to the Bitcoin miners. So if you win a block, you also win that block's value in NAT.
Yes.
So right now, let's give or take, that value was 386 million NAT.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the first miner to receive NAT in the history of NAT is NAT.FUN. And so they won block 885588. And this was around February 2025. This was February 2025?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. And then, so that's roughly a year ago.
Yeah.
So in a year, we had NAT.FUN via BTC, F2 Pool, and SpiderPool all actually engage in NAT, meaning move NAT, sell NAT, or, integrate TAP protocol, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So they've all engaged. And so this happened in a year. So we have 17 years of history in Bitcoin. Since the drop of Bitcoin, the subsidy issue has always been a problem, because the halving occurs every 4 years. And so in 1 year, we have roughly 60% of hash power just engage with a second subsidy. So to me, that sounds like a very big signal that one in the industry would pay attention to.
And maybe not laugh at?
And maybe not just like scoff at it, which in the psychological processes of a brain, that's the first thing that you do when you're introduced to something new that you don't understand. The first thing you do is just kind of laugh at it and kind of not pay attention to it.
Yeah, it's also not just not understanding. It's also a little bit of a residual after effect of being perpetually inundated with, the dogma that there is no second best. There's no need for any other token, any other innovation outside of Bitcoin itself. It is the invention of digital scarcity.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Anything outside the bounds of that is therefore not valid.
Yeah, agreed. And so to some degree, there's a lot of truthness into that, but it is not the whole story, right? Satoshi has made mistakes, right? In 2010, someone was able to print billions of Bitcoin. And then he quickly fixed it within a matter of like less than a day or something like that. And they forked away from that, and he fixed the problem, right? So there's evidence to suggest Satoshi is not perfect. And if he was perfect, we wouldn't be, having to question like the subsidy issue or quantum or any of this stuff, right? So we know this guy's just human, right? This isn't an alien invention that was just dropped on Earth.
We don't know that for sure.
Well, the evidence suggests as such, but you're right. We don't know for sure.
Yeah, especially now, because for whatever reason, like alien
talk is
proliferating at a pace I've never seen before.
Hence, and on top of that, there's zero evidence has come up. Zero. And
have you seen the recent Logan Paul footage or something where apparently he was harboring some kind of...
I haven't seen that. You didn't show that to me.
I mean, it was all over the internet, dude. It's just like some orange hue of they're inside of some vehicle, and all you can see is like the front dash, And then like there's a little bit of above that dash where you could see like an orange saucer just doing this, floating in the wind, dude. And the people inside of the vehicle are like reacting like, what is that?
That's it.
That's the video, dude.
So it could be a balloon, could be a flag.
It could be literally anything, right? And the quality of the footage too. Somehow, again, we're always back to 1980s.
Yeah, of course. So I mean, he's just playing the part, right? He's just like playing into the narrative of it. But yeah, there's no evidence to suggest that there's aliens.
No,
still,
definitely not.
Still, after Roswell in the 50s, nothing.
Yeah, just saying. Now's the time. It's culturally.
Yeah, it's
relevant to associate Satoshi as an alien.
Sure.
Just because right now people seem to want it so hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a whole different topic of discussion. Why all of a sudden aliens and like the government's playing along?
Yeah.
And proliferating this, I don't know. Well, to me,
distraction
tactic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether it's the Epstein thing or the fact that we're in the process of World War III.
Yeah.
Who knows, right? But it's out there.
Yeah. So point is that Satoshi has made mistakes and he's error prone, and so we shouldn't treat Bitcoin as some sort of like perfect thing. It's not.
Right. Well, so for those people who instinctively scoff at this, I don't know. Like, well, is that even like relevant?
I think. Well, so let's just. I don't want to call this guy out because some people have not actually looked into it in the same way that Adam Back has not really looked into it. As soon as you hear, if you're like a Bitcoin maxi and you hear about any other token, you automatically ignore it just because it's a shit token, right? And on average, you would be correct, right? It's a vapor token, and it's nothing important to be paying attention to.
Right.
You would be correct on average, but sometimes you're incorrect, and this is one of those times. And so what I'm referring to is this gentleman here, Christian. He's just like, LOL. It's like, okay, this isn't. We've seen responses like this, but who is this guy?
Yeah.
Well, this guy's the CMO of Brains, which is another Bitcoin miner.
I like how you're like, I don't want to call this guy out. Then you like,
but also
literally call out his employer, his job title.
Yeah.
It's like, I found him on LinkedIn. He lives at this address. It's like, let's go down the full loop.
Yeah. So I do this not to call this particular guy out, but to call the response to something new out, because this is common. This isn't unusual. And so we've spent a lot of time in crypto, maybe not as much as others have, but we've been around since 2019 professionally to a degree, but as traders well before that, right? So what we've learned in our experience in crypto is that when something takes off and it gets any amount of traction, you need to train yourself to look into it.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Because I remember when Pump.Fun was popping off, we were like, oh, it's just a meme coin platform. It's nothing to pay attention to. Let's just focus on something else.
It's like clearly the market's just bored.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Same thing with NFT art.
Yeah. And so when you looked into Pump.Fun, they're like, oh, they did this bonding curve thing. And yeah, we've seen this in Friend Tech and that failed. But then when you actually look at it, it's like they've developed a methodology to bootstrap liquidity for tokens. And so in our history, we've been developers since 2019. We're like, collecting liquidity for a token is a very difficult thing to do. And there's not so many ways you could do it. You could raise funds, you could sell NFTs, you could do all this stuff, but those things are hard to do, and it's hard to replicate and make it into a systemic system to launch tokens. And so what Pump.Fun did is they figured out a way to use bonding curves to bootstrap liquidity to essentially what we call a viability test of a token. And so that technology is very valuable to the tune that they've generated $1 billion in less than a year. And, everyone kind of points at Pump.Fun as like the reason why things didn't pump everywhere else. But that's not the reason. Everyone else didn't innovate. They didn't do anything different. That's why things didn't pump.
That's quite the endorsement for
Pump.
For Pump. Great name.
Well,
great name.
Point is they've developed something new that solved a problem and hence generated $1 billion in revenue, right? Not to mention how many billions in volume they did.
Yeah, and they made things more efficient along the way.
So my point is that this response is common. We even have responses like this.
Yep.
Example, pump.fun. But the point is, you got to train yourself to look into it.
You have to. You can't ignore the noise, and that's a very valuable lesson. And yeah, in a lot of cases, very expensive.
Yeah.
And in most cases, you do it because of your own, like, I don't know, barriers, mental barriers that you establish over time.
Yeah. Your sort of worldview.
Yeah.
If your worldview is Bitcoin is perfect, well, you're in for an awakening.
Right.
And as a Bitcoin miner, you know that you are struggling because over time you are making less money over time. That is consistent across the industry. This isn't something that people are just making up. You just see this in the chart. So, for example, if you look at miner revenue over the relative market cap, it is in decline, meaning the revenue that miners are generating is less than compared to the market cap of Bitcoin over time. And so what do you think this chart will lead to for Bitcoin if it continues this way? So ultimately, we have, if less money is coming into the Bitcoin miners, there are less Bitcoin miners to mine Bitcoin. And when there are less Bitcoin miners, you have an increase in centralization. And how do you have the value proposition of Bitcoin when it's centralized? Right? And so these things need to be, thought out. And so a lot of people have not done this clearly in Bitcoin. And, their first response to SpiderPool, the fifth biggest Bitcoin miner distributing Bitcoin and NAT, your first response is to laugh instead of like, why are they doing that?
Yeah, and why is there like a huge community rallying behind this post also?
Yeah, it's like, yeah, we've seen this too. Like this could be some sort of gamified thing, but or not. Or this could be completely organic. I mean, you got to be pragmatic about this too.
Yeah, but if you are, again, operating off of the rails of your worldview, you'll see those engagement metrics and automatically assume that they're,
right. And that is a good basis of assumption, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't look into it.
Yeah. So, but nonetheless, because this is like a natural occurrence, there are others out there. People who don't immediately scoff at it, they do.
Right.
Take on the signal, and then it's like, okay, let me look further. We're getting a ton of those inquiries now because people are starting to get first-time exposure to NAT, and that's like the obvious expected consequence of price number go up.
Yeah.
Right? It's like more people become aware of it. Then they start to question and wonder, like, what is the value here that others are seeing that I have not yet?
Yeah.
Right? And then you've got,
a dialogue.
Yeah, between the market, and that's real. That's organic. Like that's what's supposed to be happening. That's what crypto is supposed to be about.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So then, so we have SpiderPool distributing NAT. We have, 60% of the hash power engaging with NAT already, for Bitcoin. But what I find interesting is that if people are struggling to understand the value proposition of NAT, then we can just go back to the basics, right? So if you look at any Bitcoin price prediction, just look at anybody predicting whatever the price is, it basically on average looks like this nonlinear regression curve, right? On average, right? You could do this on supply and demand. You can do this on power law, whatever. But the point is, it just kind of curves off into the distance. And yeah, this is great in terms of number go up technology because over time number goes up. But what Bitcoin demands in terms of decentralization, security budget, it demands the price to double forever. And as you can see here, it's been doubling well beyond doubling over the first 17 years of history. So it's been exponential. But the requirement is that it stays exponential over time. And so as Bitcoin's subsidy continues to have, that means that the price needs to double. So the equation is x squared. That is in exponential growth. And so what does x squared look like over time? So we have a chart that kind of goes off into the distance and hits some sort of, approaches like an asymptote what it looks like here. But this is what x squared looks like. So it's a number that goes up forever, infinitely.
Right.
And so there's nothing in the history in the universe that does that. So the Bitcoin chart, if people were predicting Bitcoin to look like this, like all the charts look like that, that'd be fine, right? And even then, even if it does this, and in 2140, the subsidy is 0. And so even that is not good enough. And so so we know that it's not going to double, and here's the requirement that it needs to do, and things look like this. So clearly there's a discrepancy between what the math is suggesting and what it's actually being predicted to do.
Yeah. I like how you put X2 and it brought up X-Men.
X-Men, yeah.
It's like perfect side along as you explain
Yeah.
mathematics to us.
Yeah, Google gets me. It's like, you want x squared? Well, here's what that looks like.
Yeah, it seems to be probably the more frequent
Yeah.
X2 request. It's like, yeah, people were trying to look for a movie. They're trying to understand, mathematics here. But in the context of what you're talking about, yeah, I guess we already understand like that it's hard for people to mentally grasp and visualize. I remember you gave some good representations of what that could look like. I think in like a 20-30 year time frame or something.
Yeah.
The equal value of Bitcoin on this exponential growth curve correlates to every single grain of sand on Earth being worth $700.
That's right.
Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, yeah. To me, that makes more like the absurdity of that kind of assumption has to align in order for things to maintain, basically.
Yeah, so that analogy was basically on this, right? If you price Bitcoin on an x squared trajectory, that would be like taking every grain of sand on Earth and pricing it, each grain of sand at $700.
Yeah, crazy. Well, maybe with the pace of AI, isn't like silicon made out of sand?
Sand, correct. Yeah, silicon.
Maybe that might actually happen if these like data centers keep spawning up and we start launching satellites in space, but probably not in most likely scenarios.
Yeah,
not to be the case.
Yeah, I mean it doesn't. Yeah, it wouldn't scale linearly like that. The more sand that you have, the more computational power.
Well, we'd have to like use it all, right?
We'd have to use it all, and that's
probably not gonna happen.
Not practical.
Yeah, but the other thing you said is like, so the question here though is like, okay, if Bitcoin becomes more or less secure over time as a result of this, like who's actually gonna seize that opportunity and for why?
The governments, they're gonna pay for that, right?
I don't know. I'm asking, like, why would any entity want to do this in the first? What's the honeypot, right?
Yeah, I mean
that's why like quantum has this like obviousness to it, I guess, because like with quantum, the fear, the risk is people's Bitcoin will be stolen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? But in the context of like this economic subsidy conundrum, it's not as clear cut of like what is the consequence of the fallout effect.
Yeah, I mean, in today's world, like today, the consequence is 5% of people holding Bitcoin, they're valueless, right? If this subsidy or quantum happens like the next day, everyone gets hacked, or the subsidy crisis just like exponentially like shows its face. 5% of the world's population loses their bags. That's what happens today. So most people wouldn't care, right? Most people wouldn't care. The problem is when Bitcoin becomes geopolitical, that's when the attacks would occur. Because right now, there's, I think the CEO of Brains was saying that it takes $24 billion to hack Bitcoin for like an hour. It's like, yeah, $24 billion feels like a lot of money, but when you look at the security budgets of other countries, they're in the realms of 500 billion to $1 trillion per year. So if Bitcoin becomes a geopolitical situation, it doesn't take that much money to really break Bitcoin, right? $24 billion is nothing compared to the $1 trillion that the United States is putting into for the security budget of the United States.
So what does a geopolitical situation look like?
So let's say, for example, the United States being, they transition the dollar to be backed by, hard assets like gold and Bitcoin.
Right, which you could assume is kind of a prerequisite of like a historical event to occur in
yeah.
order for that like assumption of that price trajectory to actually play
Yeah,
out.
100%. Yeah.
Like if you're fully reliant on Bitcoin's doubling effect, price effect,
Yeah.
to be that security device,
Yeah.
maintenance device, then yeah, it's almost unavoidable. This asset has to become geopolitical scale,
For sure.
the same way gold is.
And it absolutely can be. But the problem is that once it becomes geopolitical, then attacks are likely,
Yeah, there's like a real motivation now.
yeah, real motivation, because it's not about like hacking people for money. It's about disrupting finance. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, disrupting whatever it is that's like factored into some nations'
Yeah. Yeah.
geopolitical positioning.
Yeah, for sure. If you're on the game board, right? If you're one of these countries that wants to win in the game, and one of the players in the game is holding a ton of Bitcoin because that's what their financial strategy is, and you have enough capital to attack that country in a financial sense, you're going to do that.
Yeah. Now, is there a case? Because the other argument is, yeah, there's that cost, and every country can do that, but there's like a hardware assembly friction.
For sure. Yeah. So that's a very difficult thing to do. But there's this thing called bribing, which you could bribe a miner to go and attack the network as well. And it's not about taking money again. It's about attacking the network and really getting into the confidence of the network.
Right. Yeah, disrupting the confidence in
Yeah.
what this thing is so that plummets the value of it, therefore destabilizing that, enemy state.
Yeah. And so then that's like the position is, well, it hasn't happened yet. It's like, yeah, because it isn't geopolitical yet.
Yeah. So all this is like a long way just to say, we don't ever want this to happen, right?
Yeah, and that's the point of the NAT token. So if you can imagine 51% attack, well, NAT token has done a 51% attack on Bitcoin, except it's not an attack, it's a support of Bitcoin. And so we've essentially bribed miners to be more honest, and by delivering more value to them by being honest miners in the network. And so the value proposition of the NAT isn't just delivering more value to the Bitcoin miners, it's in the way that it's being delivered and that it doesn't decay over time. That's the value of NAT.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, I think we're going to have to, at some point, hit up one of these Bitcoin conferences, dude.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's just, man, talking about security, no one thinks... I've been in the security industry before, and security is just not sexy. It's just not. And everybody's going to go to sleep on this like type of conversation.
Well, you need a good hook then, right? It's something, maybe like a doomsday trailer. Look at that, let's bust out some sedents here.
Yeah.
Some Sedence 2.0 prompts. It's like, remember that article that they put out? Here's what society looks like 4 years from now because of AI.
Yeah.
What is it? Citrony?
Citrony, something like that.
Yeah, we need a Citrony version for this problem. Like, here's what the world looks like 10 years from now, like after, Bitcoin achieved its geopolitical presence, and then everybody swept that subsidy thing under the rug, and then here's what happens. Right?
Yeah.
And let's inject some Matt Damon, some Tom Cruise. The same guy.
Yeah.
You gotta add some Tom Cruise in there, dude, to like really slam it home.
Yeah.
But you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
right?
that will definitely get the hook in there for sure.
It's like a 10-minute clip.
Yeah.
On the stage, and then you come walking out after.
Yeah.
It's like, you see?
You guys want this to happen?
Yeah. And then they get sleep. It's
Yeah.
like, all right, bust out your sleeping bags, dude.
Yeah.
Let me talk to you about security.
Yeah, the other thing that I find interesting is that the complacency within the Bitcoin community, like it's definitely there. And the funny thing is that being complacent ends up turning out okay for them.
I know. What a fortunate life position to be in, right?
Yeah.
Like be a Bitcoin maxi, Bitcoin well.
Yeah, and it's like the community just figured it out. And that's kind of the value proposition of Bitcoin, is that it has such a network effect that it has like an immune system property to it as well. And in that immune system, it is designed to kind of help the longevity of Bitcoin.
For sure. Yeah. I would assume that to be Correct. And I guess that's why this quantum risk is getting so much
Yeah.
headway,
For good reason. Yeah.
because it's a demonstration of exactly that. It's like, how
That's right.
is this network going to
Yeah.
react and respond and coordinate and actually implement? Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we get to see that in real time. Who knows what the final outcome of that will be, but nonetheless, it adds credibility to what you just said. So what we're doing and what this community and ecosystem around NAT that's being built,
Yeah.
it's another representation of that as well, where it's like, there didn't need to be mass hysteria
Yeah.
in order for like an immune response to kind of, send out the antibodies, right?
Yeah, and there's other components to this too that makes NAT just work well for this particular situation, is that it's a token. It's a token. What does a token do? It aligns people, right? Bitcoin aligns people for if you're holding Bitcoin, you want Bitcoin to be successful, right? If you're holding any coin, you want it to be successful. And the natural side effect of holding NAT means that it secures the Bitcoin network.
Yeah.
And it's the only token that does that.
Yeah, and it rallies people, lots of people,
Yeah.
around that same common shared goal.
To the
basically.
point where you get 60% of the Bitcoin hash power to support the token because it helps their business, right? This is what tokens do, right? It's an alignment mechanism.
Yeah, so then, like you're saying, in most cases, it's a safe bet to scoff at most tokens.
Yeah.
But in others, maybe you should, give it a little bit of like a...
Yeah, just do like a scientific analysis. Just do a practical just assessment as to what's happening.
But maybe the reason why that's not happening at scale is because we just haven't penetrated to the right zones of market, I guess, existence.
Yeah.
Right now we're hovering around 50 million. We haven't really seen much reaction shift from like, the maxi crowd, the veteran users of the Bitcoin network, I guess, because we haven't breached into like the 100 million plus category. I think once NAT does that, I think it's very likely to do that. I think you're going to see a lot of shifting perceptions in real time. I think that is the mechanism where people give it a shot, meaning like, okay, I'll actually click on this NAT paper link and give it a read.
Yeah.
As opposed to just LOL emoji.
Yeah.
I think it's literally that simple.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's another psychological component.
Yeah.
And so another thing about the NAT token and the number going up here is that if you look at natgmi.com, there's this theoretical USD value of NAT per block, right? So right now it's delivering $46.49 per block to Bitcoin miner.
That's about one Five Guys burger.
$50?
No, I'm just kidding. It's not that bad. But maybe a burger and some fries. You're up there, dude.
Yeah. So they're earning a burger per block. All right. So big deal. What have you guys done? Right. It's like, what's the big deal here? Right. Well, the big deal here is that once it starts reaching the 100 million market cap, and right, that's the whole point of this like toggle here, is that it's $100 at 100 million, right? But once it gets to $1 billion, then you're looking at $1,000 per block. So big deal, right? It's still $1,000. That's not going to pay the bills. Well, that is exactly. So we can go to mempool.space here. And you can see that on average, right, you click on the latest block here, and they've earned in total fees $896 on the last block, right? $1,400 here. Next block, $800. So we're at parity with the total fees per block on average.
At what market cap?
At $1 billion market cap.
At $1 billion, which is 14x smaller than Bitcoin. 14.
So 1400x.
Yeah, I was about to say
1400x smaller than Bitcoin.
And 20x higher than today for NAT.
And 20x higher than today for NAT.
Yeah, so it sounds like a big ask, but it really isn't. I mean, it is and it isn't. Meaning,
but the point is that let's say it reaches 100 billion, right? In this crazy scenario, it reaches 100 billion. So let's move it to 100, and that turns into $100,000 per block. So right now, miners are earning roughly $235,000 per block. So it's essentially half
Yeah.
of the subsidy at 100 billion. So what? So once that Bitcoin gets to 14 trillion, which is a 10x market cap, and NAT goes along with that percentage rate, it grows. The security budget grows. It doesn't halve. That's the point of this.
Right.
Is that Bitcoin can grow in value and the security budget can grow in value.
Yeah, and it takes less of a capital lift, I guess, to get this degree of a subsidy.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine trying to get $100,000 in value for transaction fees per block.
Yeah.
You couldn't do it.
Correct. And that's the de facto response to a lot of people. Like, even to the inevitable scale of the problem at 2140, this for sure gets cut off. Like Bitcoin emission.
Yeah. And then what do you do?
It can only be fees.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So is everyone okay securing the network with $1,000 per block? Basically 400 grand per day.
Yeah, that's GG. That's mega GG.
Yeah. So the reason why I have a lot of confidence in what I'm saying is because this is supported by the math, right? This isn't like something. This isn't like something I'm just hoping for. This is the math suggests this.
Yeah. Yeah. So who needs Polymarket, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
To make a bet on this outcome.
Yeah. Exactly.
The best bet. That's the best betting device. Like, if you've done the math and you've done the calculations and you agree to the value of math.
Yeah.
Just buy NAT, right?
Yeah, sit on it. That's why we have such a strong community. They're confident. They've done their own math. They're not just listening to a bunch of YouTubers, right? They've done the math. They've come to the same conclusion. It's like the only sensible thing to do is buy and hold NAT.
Yeah. Yeah, so shout out to the community. So it's big that this is happening, but it's also creating a ripple effect in the Bitcoin ecosystem, which we talked about in our last video.
Yeah, so watch that. We sparked a Bitcoin ecosystem run here.
Yeah, I think it's pretty safe to say that.
Yeah, I would say so. You couldn't point to anything that happened within the Bitcoin Ordinals ecosystem that would trigger some sort of spark. Like, it could be totally a coincidence, but it seems unlikely.
Yeah, I've seen people try. Apparently, already got listed on Aster.
Oh, okay.
Which is a perps platform on Binance, I think, but that happened well after this announcement, so it's not that.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say. The math is just saying things, right? It just suggests this stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe we should shift gears to NAT.FUN.
Yeah, I would say so. So yeah, so then, yeah, those Bitcoin maxis like watching this are like, okay, now they're gonna shill their whatever fun platform they want to shill, right?
Right. So what would you say?
Well, I think from my perspective, Michael Saylor, he's gained a pretty big name for himself, right? He's got like 750,000 Bitcoin. He's on his way for like 1 million, and he's got a treasury strategy company. And if what we're saying turns out to be true, meaning it's everyone corroborates and agrees that the math is correct here, then it kind of makes sense to find some sort of way to collect NAT, right, at a high clip, because NAT would be very valuable, right? If it does reach 1 billion or 100 billion, and it does scale as Bitcoin scale, like that would, if that were to happen, if I came back from the future 20 years from now and I said this is what's going to happen, NAT will be 100 billion, Bitcoin would be at 20 trillion, whatever it is, and you do have security growing as Bitcoin grows, then it kind of makes sense to kind of collect NAT. And so NAT.FUN is taking the properties of Bitcoin, meaning the block production of Bitcoin, finding patterns within that block production, and allowing people to launch tokens against that pattern, so that when that pattern occurs again, you get additional assets, additional fungible tokens, additional NFTs.
Right.
And so if that works, meaning the platform generates revenue, we're going to be purchasing the NAT token for because we believe in buying the token. It's going to be more valuable in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that kind of gets the whole network effect concept kind of initiated.
Yeah.
Meaning we would expect other applications utilizing DMT to kind of follow in that step.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, which is, again, in support of NAT, getting it, deepening its liquidity scenario across the entire crypto landscape, which ultimately helps this Bitcoin subsidy problem as a result. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what may look like just like a, an attempt at memery,
Yeah.
or like whatever you identify like any of this stuff to be, that's like not, fully aligned to what Bitcoin is.
Yeah.
Basically anything besides it, then you could just simply ignore it. But there's a market demographic that, likes this stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah, and part of this is like a scientific experiment. In science, you tend to make predictions, and the prediction for ours is basically can you take the substrate of Bitcoin and essentially export it to a chain like Solana, for example, and Solana is just getting all the traction, right, of today, right? They're doing the most volume, they're doing most everything. And so can you take the properties of Bitcoin and allow those properties to essentially exist on a different chain in the way that this fungible token's supply is a non-arbitrary value based on what Bitcoin says? And then can you take the technology of a viability test, which is a bonding curve, and can you say that if a token launched by a creator launches a token and it is viable, meaning it graduates, can you distribute non-arbitrary NFTs, right? UNATs, unique non-arbitrary tokens. And then what would that do if you distribute these UNATs essentially for free for everybody? Can you create a market that starts at zero and then it finds its own, viable market in terms of like the market cap of a NFT collection starting at zero? What would that do if you systematized that methodology in the same way Pump.Fun systematized launching a bootstrap liquidity platform? All right, we're back. We had to take a little break there, but we were just talking about NAT.FUN. And so if you were watching this podcast and you were watching last week's podcast, we said we were releasing it Monday or Tuesday, and it's been a whole week.
I think we might have said that.
And then we said that 2 weeks ago too.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Which is part of the course, right?
Yeah, so
especially when you're trying to iron down like very critical components here.
Yeah, so the last 5% of any platform tends to you tend to underestimate how much longer to finish that 5%. That 5% including testing and all that stuff. And it always takes longer than you expect. And it's just because you find things that you didn't expect, and it just takes time to fix those things, and then just kind of delays things. So that's kind of what we've been experiencing. But going back to the thesis of NAT.FUN is like NFTs are pretty much dead. So it's not hard to see how dead it is. And we got marketplaces just completely shutting down. Foundation recently was another one that shut down.
Yeah.
And, they have like 300,000 followers. So like follower count doesn't really help here. If you think you don't have enough followers, well, it does not matter in the grand scheme of things. Like it does not help you all that much, clearly. So Foundation went down. Other marketplaces have gone down recently, and NFTs are dead. And so the question is, well, is the technology of NFTs dead? Is there anything wrong with the technology? And the answer is no. It's just the way our thesis is the way that NFTs launched back in 2021 and after was a recipe for failure. They all launched at high market caps, and if you go look at the charts for any of these NFT collections, it's just straight down technology. So what we're saying with NAT.FUN is, what if you launch NFTs off of this viability test first? Can your token graduate? And if it can, what if we distributed NFTs to all the token holders for free? What would happen if that was a systemic launch mechanism? So then the thesis is like every NFT collection starts at essentially zero market cap. And so what would that do to the NFT ecosystem? And so that's the test. So we think this will address that problem. And so going back to what I was saying earlier is like as a scientist, as a science person, you got to make these predictions, and you got to create a thesis and see if your thesis is correct.
Yeah. I think we already know that the market will enjoy like low entry mints.
Yeah.
But what we haven't seen is like where that can coexist with like creator sustainability. Right?
Yeah.
Meaning like in order to give the market that, you're essentially creating assets for free, so the creator has no incentive alignment to, put in the extra work to actually build something of substance around what it is they created. So
yeah,
NAT.FUN kind of completes that full circle loop, where it's like we can create collections at basically almost zero cost, and then you get entry to those as well.
Yeah,
and then there's an actual sustainability loop, so that the creator has monetization, therefore they can actually grow.
Yeah,
Along with that IP. So yeah, we're experimenting on a lot of different vectors here, and it's just we're seeing a little bit of a resurgence in the ordinals market and tiny smidget of activity in the NFT side of things too.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But as we know, like things typically, in order to like truly come back, they have to come in a new version of oneself.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not going to just run it again. Like, that's not going to work. And even if you hope and hope hard, it's not going to work. So you got to introduce something new. And so NAT.FUN is a combination of like leveraging the value proposition of Bitcoin's block data production on a different chain that is more user-friendly. Because if you haven't used Bitcoin recently or ever, it's a pretty bad experience. And so that's why it's a good store of value, because the value is stored, right? You don't have to use it. So so Solana has a very good user experience. So what if you combined Bitcoin's block production data with Solana good user experience? Like, what could occur? And so that's the thesis, that's the test. And it should be ready by Monday or Tuesday.
Oh, God. I'll take your word for it, dude. So plan accordingly.
Yeah.
Or don't. It's up to you. But definitely watch definitely follow us on Twitter at NAT.FUN.
Yeah, NAT.FUN.
And our personal accounts, because we will,
you'll first see it available on NAT.FUN. That's the first place you'll see it.
Okay, well, there it is. Yeah, that's your entry. That's the alpha for the week.
Yeah.
And for the day. Because, we think this is going to work. Otherwise, we wouldn't have spent so much time and effort working on this thing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so that's been our entire history, like professionally in the crypto space. We've never done anything that's like not unique, and so this is another an effort in that. So we talked about SpiderPool, we talked about the viability of the NAT token, why it exists, why it's getting some traction, why it's really the only token that's been going up in the Bitcoin ecosystem for the last couple of months. While everything else has been going down, NAT has been going up. If you guys have any questions about the NAT token, again, please read the NAT paper on natgmi.com. It's really good. If you're a Bitcoiner, you'll be in support of this token, because it creates a system of longevity for Bitcoin that hasn't really been there, right? Because the alternative is let's make Bitcoin infinite. Let's tax everybody holding Bitcoin. Like these are the options that Bitcoiners have given like the community, and they're not viable. So if you guys have any questions, please let us know in the comment section below. I appreciate you, and we'll catch you in the next podcast.
Peace.